Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is a brand new title for the PlayStation 5, helping usher in the new era of console video gaming, and I really enjoy this game a lot. I feel like I've been hearing that there's some discourse surrounding this game, and after playing through it and experiencing what's on offer here, I really can't imagine what that was. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of behind-the-scenes drama. In fact, it seems like the development of this game was rather smooth. The team was not forced to crunch at any point, which is kind of phenomenal to hear in this day and age when it seems so, like, just mandatory for all these big developers to force all of their workers to just work horribly obscene hours and under terrible conditions to just crank these games out, and that didn't seem like it was the case here. It was also a pretty stable experience. I heard that a lot of people were having a lot of bugs and stuff like that. I'm not going to say that those don't exist, but I really didn't run into a whole lot of problems from that regard, so that's not really something I'm going to be touching on here. I just want to go ahead and give my quick thoughts on this title to give you an idea of what I thought of Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. I'm going to be trying out this whole side quest thing again and seeing if maybe this will go a little smoother than last time, and if this is something I'm going to be doing later on in the future to quickly talk about brand new games that have come out that I can't exactly do a full review on like I do for bigger videos. And don't worry about spoilers, I'm not giving anything more than a basic synopsis of the plot, and I'm not going to be showing any footage that's anything from beyond like the first handful of worlds. I don't want to give too much away. So Rift Apart takes place after Ratchet and Clank Into the Nexus, so this is set in the original continuity, not following the newer continuity that was established with the movie and the subsequent tie-in game that came out along with it. I got mixed feelings about that title, but I can't get into all of that here. I do think that a bit of the edge and kind of the identity of the series was not necessarily lost, but it wasn't really realized in that game, and I especially wasn't super thrilled with the way Ratchet was depicted in that title, where he was just missing all of the snark and just you know, he just didn't feel like Ratchet. This version of Ratchet in Rift Apart is definitely a lot softer than his earlier days, but it definitely feels like it comes from more of a place of growth, and you still have, you know, he'll roll his eyes, and he'll still kind of react the way you would expect him to certain situations. He does not have an infinite level of patience with everybody. He's not just this doughy-eyed Pixar character. You know, he feels like Ratchet. This feels like a Ratchet and Clank game, and I love that. That's definitely the first place I want to start with. Man, what a throwback. Just this opening level, seeing all of these power-ups and like even just that gliding mechanic that, you know, you have the propellers come out of Clank and everything. I felt like a kid again, just seeing Ratchet and Clank for the first time back on the PS2. It was kind of magical, honestly. And yeah, this game really does help keep that feeling going. You know, you've got the fast-paced nature of those classic Ratchet and Clank games. It is an action platformer, it's a third-person shooter, it's everything that you want out of that. There's some puzzle elements with Clank. You know, they definitely helped develop that from other games like Crack in Time, you know, among earlier titles as well. You know, just the running around, whacking things with your wrench, shooting down everything, finding incredible new weapons like the topiary sprinkler, where you throw it down and this garden sprinkler will spray onto enemies and turn them into bushes so that, you know, they're stationary and they're easier to hit and they'll sometimes take more damage. And then, of course, like, the more you fight with those weapons, the more, like, experience that you'll get for them. They'll level up, they'll become more powerful, and then the more rare titanium that you find throughout the levels, you can power up and get new upgrades for weapons and stuff like that. And the more bolts that you collect, you can buy new weapons and everything. It is, it's a very simple gameplay loop where it is mostly run around, do a little bit of exploring, shoot down enemies, and keep moving forward. It's nothing insanely complicated when you boil it down to its basics. It's pretty simple, but I think that's very much a good thing. I think that, you know, they focused on the foundational gameplay here instead of trying to go too wacky with it by completely changing things up. Definitely the best way to go about it, especially since the extra bells and whistles that they added to the gameplay here not only really really showcased the capabilities of the PS5. Like, this game could not have run on a PlayStation 4. It just would not have worked. But you know, none of those gimmicks or those ideas get in the way of that core gameplay. The entire game centers around this idea where Dr. Nefarious has taken the Dimensionator after Clank has tried to reassemble it so Ratchet could run around and find the other Lombaxes. Well, they try to stop him, and it ends up damaging the Dimensionator. There's a bunch of explosions, dimensional rifts, and everything like that. It starts going haywire, and Ratchet and Clank are separated. We find a new Lombax named Rivet. Our teams are split apart, but they're working together to stop Dr. and now Emperor Nefarious from this other dimension where Nefarious has reigned supreme and always wins, so that they can stop the two mad robotic scientists from causing interdimensional and multiversal cataclysm. It's a simple plot. It's not super complicated, and it didn't really need to be. One of the things that helps keep this game elevated and keeps everything interesting is the characters, the way they interact not only in cutscenes, but during the game itself. I especially love just our main cast here, Ratchet and Clank. You know them, you love them, they're very charming, even to this day. The new kid on the block, Rivet, I actually like quite a bit. I actually really enjoy her attitude. You know, she's got a good heart and everything, but she's not as easy to trust people. You know, she's got a little dynamic to her. She's a three-dimensional character. It's great. It's really interesting seeing her as sort of a contrast to Ratchet. You know, she feels a little more similar to the way Ratchet was during his early days. So not only do we get a little bit of that attitude that we saw from him back in the day, but we also kind of see how he's grown. But I also think that Rivet stands as her own character very well, and I love the way that she interacts with like side characters and everything like that. And the side cast is a lot of fun as well. I wish I could say that all of them were incredibly memorable. I thought the Morts in particular were fun, but maybe overstayed their welcome just a little bit. I wasn't crazy about them, but I never disliked them. Obviously, I don't want to get too deep into that. I don't want to spoil anything, but I did enjoy the writing. I thought the interactions were a ton of fun. I loved being in this world with all these characters, and again, that humor just really kept everything just really, really enjoyable.
Clank. Huh?
And of course I have to mention how this whole like interdimensional plot is used to enhance the gameplay as well. One of the coolest mechanics that you're gonna see here is these dimensional rifts that are scattered around the battle arenas and the levels themselves. So you see these rifts and you can use your glove to basically tether yourself to them. And rather than pulling yourself closer to that location, you're basically pulling that location to you. You know, it's the same end result, but there's this really cool and unique feeling to just the way that it's handled here. And it's really fun always seeing these rifts around, because not only do you get to use these in battle arenas where you can warp yourself around areas faster so you can get a better layout of the arena, you can get an advantage on enemies, you can warp in behind them and get a better shot, stuff like that, but they also scatter them around the environment. It really helps with exploring. You know, go off the beaten path, you'll find a rift maybe, and then you can go in and find a gold bolt or something like that. It's great. It's a lot of fun. Now, I think the mechanic that felt the most inspired and just impressed me the most was these crystals that you hit, and then it just changes the environment around you. It's like the game is constantly loading in two separate environments just stacked on top of each other, and you can transport to one or the other instantly just by hitting one of these crystals. And you'll have to transition between these two different versions of the same area to progress. It's almost like a Link to the Past, but, you know, kind of translated into this action platformer setting. And it's just such a fun idea. It's so well realized. Again, it's one of those things where, like, without that solid state drive, you just really couldn't make this work. Not this smoothly, not this well. Otherwise, you just had to sit through a loading screen every time you hit it. It's just not as smooth, you know? Of course, the battles are fun. They're very fast-paced. There's just this great energy to the entire game, grinding through rails and stuff like that. It's a sort of sense of speed that I've kind of missed from, like, you know, some of the older days of 3D Sonic and stuff like that. Man, I had such a big smile on my face from ear to ear, basically like a good 90% of my time playing through this game. I never got to a point where I felt bored or where I felt like an area was lasting too long or anything like that. No, the game actually keeps a really, you know, brisk pace to everything. It kind of feels like it's kind of going with the same speed you would usually blast through worlds in one of the older titles. You could be spending anywhere between like 40 minutes to maybe an hour and a half on a world, depending on how much you explore it and stuff like that. And it feels like something is constantly happening. I think that's really the important part here. And of course, these, there's side stuff to do as well. You gotta go out and you gotta find gold bolts. There is, of course, a good battle arena. I like to think that every game with really good combat should have something kind of like this, where you can just let loose and have a ton of fun with the gameplay here, where, it's almost like a playground for just playing with the mechanics. Man, it's a lot of fun. I would like to see more like obstacle course sort of stuff, and the game does have something like this. There's these areas where you can find like a little dimensional pocket, and by opening these up and going inside, you have, again, it's like a whole little obstacle course inside the levels themselves. It's a neat idea, but they are incredibly short, and I never really ran into many that were particularly challenging. And I would like to see if something like this is done in the future. I would really like to see something like this mixed with more combat-oriented mechanics. I honestly think that they could find something really cool to do with this sort of thing, and I'm just kind of spitballing ideas here. It was actually kind of difficult to find a lot to complain about with this game. One kind of source of contention that I'm sure a lot of people are going to bring up is the price tag and the amount of game that you're getting for it. So this game does cost $70. It is $69.99 at retail price. That is not a small amount of money. We have already seen that games were kind of going from $60 to $70 for new releases. I believe like the deluxe edition of Miles Morales was also like this. And not every game has bitten that bullet. I'm pretty sure the PS5 version of Resident Evil Village was also $60 rather than $70. But this is essentially a second-party developer now, with Insomniac being owned by PlayStation Studios. I would imagine Sony is really wanting to push, this is a game that they know everyone is going to buy. It is going to be a bestseller. It's inevitable. They really want to push people getting used to paying $70 for new games. As for me, I never regretted a single cent out of that extra $10 that I paid for this. Again, it's not a super long game. When I say that it's paced in a very similar way to the older titles, I sort of mean that in the overall length as well. This game is maybe somewhere around 10 to 12 hours. It's going to be a bit more than that if you're looking to 100% it, but for $70, I think that some people are going to have some issues with that, especially since in the second half, you're going to see a lot of like recycled enemy designs and stuff like that, where you start seeing where things are kind of being reused and everything like that. That's standard for games. I didn't have a problem with it. And again, this isn't me saying that it was really bugging me while I was playing or anything like that, but it does stand out to something that might bug somebody else. Is this game going to be worth $70 to everyone that wants to pick it up? I don't think so, honestly. For me, again, it was, and I think for a lot of people, they'll be happy to pay that price tag. I would rather it was $60. $70 is not a small amount of money for something that I'm going to beat in like half a week. Am I going to replay this game? Absolutely. It's a blast. I'm going to be getting a lot more use out of this than I would some other games that are probably priced lower. So, it might even itself out in that way. Replayability goes a very, very long way when it comes to that sort of thing. But not everyone really has the time to keep replaying games. Not everybody enjoys that. So $70 is a lot to ask, especially when PlayStation 5s, considering this is exclusive to the PlayStation 5s, are not exactly in every household right now. Not everyone is able to get their hands on one, and a lot of people still blame Sony for how that has been handled. Now, whether Sony is at fault for how difficult PlayStation 5s have been able to gather, I'm not going to get into here because I don't know all the factors. I don't know if it's really a distribution thing. I don't know if it's a manufacturing thing. I don't have the info, so I can't really comment on that. But, there is definitely something to be said for Sony understanding that, man, between the console already being so hard to get a hold of, are those people also willing to start shelling out more money for the experiences to justify how hard it was for them to get that system in the first place? These are questions that we're going to have to be answering over the next couple of years. This is a very strange time for the game industry, and they got a lot to figure out, and it's not necessarily our job to do it, but it is our job to provide feedback and let developers know how we feel and what we think of what's being presented to us. Obviously, I say pay with your wallets. I was happy to support this game, if only because it's the sort of games I'm happy to see. Insomniac has been doing such a good job between the Spider-Man titles, which I both I enjoy both of them a lot. But this is like, this is kind of returning to a form of game that I've been missing for a while. And it was every bit as much fun as I remembered it being back in the day. And I'm going to be returning to this for sure in the future. If you enjoy Ratchet and Clank yourself, if you, by some miracle, also have a PlayStation 5 and you have the money to spare, I'd say yeah, you know what, support the game, pick it up, you're gonna have a good time. But again, I do want to stress, you are not going to be playing this for a ton of time unless you go through for a couple of playthroughs and you really scour to do that 100% running and everything like that. And you are going to be seeing some of the cracks forming where you start thinking, oh yeah, this is a video game where, developers have to reuse assets and stuff like that. They put so much work and so much detail into the ones that are there, but you do see them a lot, especially in the second half, where you kind of stop seeing new things, I guess is probably a good way to put it. Now, the stuff that you're doing throughout the game makes it all worth it to me. Whether that'll be for you or not, I like to think it will be. But of course, at the end of the day, that is just my 2 cents. I do apologize. I wish I was a little better at doing these off the cuff. That's something that I'm going to be working on as I continue to make videos like this. I want to do more, side quest reviews where I'm able to kind of go unscripted and kind of work my way to get a few more videos out on just some quick thoughts on like new releases and stuff like that of what I've been playing. So these aren't like the big in-depth reviews. If you're looking for something a little more analytical, I think that I'll be able to do something like that for this if I eventually get around to reviewing the entire Ratchet and Clank series. And I would really like to talk about this game more. I just wanted to go ahead and provide my just kind of first impression feedback. And of course, I would like to take a moment to thank my lovely top tier patrons, Patricia Marcoux, Christine Larkin, Earl Valco, Nicholas Morgan, Jeremiah Harrison, Wonton Photo, and Surus the Skeptic. Thank you guys so much. As I always say, you make it possible and you make it worth it. So if you have any feedback for me, what are some personal things that you wanted to hear out of this review that maybe you didn't? What are some things that you would like me to work on? Maybe I should stutter less. Whatever it is, just go ahead and let me know. And I will see you soon for the Zelda 2 review. Alright, love you guys. See you next mission.